Now I know it's early, but have you gotten any feedback from the Texas fans in regarding, how competitive they expect to be right out the gate in the SEC? Because I know we're all making the jokes. Texas can't even compete in the Big 12, and I don't mean to offend Longhorns, but I kind of see this similar as Missouri when they entered the SEC. I don't know if you recall that time, but I mean, people thought it was a joke. They thought they would take 10 years for them to be competitive. And then I know the SEC East was down, but they won the division 2 years in a row. So could you see something like that for Texas, depending on, let's say they get in the league next year?
No, I think, look, I love being on your show. And the one thing I always try to do is just keep it real. Like, I'm not going to try to BS anyone just to say it for BS.
Mhm.
I think the program that could really hit the ground running is Oklahoma. I think that is the team that has shown us success,
Mhm.
been very successful. Lincoln Riley is a fantastic coach. He just is. His ability to recruit quarterbacks is clearly probably I don't know who else really compares to him in the country as far as producing top elite quarterbacks. I mean, the Spencer Rattler ends up being a first round pick, or you're starting to look at Baker Mayfield to Kyler Murray to Jalen Hurts to Spencer Rattler. Like, I mean, that guy can do it. And the thing is that people don't know, who may not follow OU, they've got a defensive coordinator by the name of Alex Grinch, and that defense got a lot better last year. And it's like OU got to the point when they knew they had a high-powered offense, but when they got to the Final Four, they were losing because of their defense.
Mhm.
And so they put a heavy emphasis on improving their defense. This is a team that I think will be talked about. We'll be talking about this team in late November, but early December, as a team that we're talking about potentially in the CFP. So I think OU has a chance to hit the ground running. And I know people will say certain things. You're funny to talk about Billy Lucci. I think what SEC fans have to understand is that, preparing for OU for a bowl game is one thing. 3 weeks to prepare, 4 weeks to prepare. You've got a lot of time. But when you've got 3 to 4 days to prepare for an OU, when you really going to only get you do a Sunday kind of practice, kind of walk through,
Mhm.
having the day off, and then you only have a few days, it's going to be different. It's a different world. And so I think for me, OU is a team that goes in there, is poised for the success. The Texas thing to me is a wait and see game. I need to see what they do this year, but more so than, and if they could have some success this year, I could say, okay, potentially they could be successful. I mean, the SEC is good as a conference as they are. I mean, once you get past, some of the top teams, your Floridas, your Georgias, A&M is really good. I mean, then you get into like this middle area where I don't look at it and say these teams are that much better than maybe Texas. Is Mississippi that much better than Texas? Arkansas, I don't think is better than Texas. We'll find out this year.
Mhm.
Is Tennessee better than Texas? South Carolina, I mean, Vanderbilt, of course not. Missouri. So there's a middle tier of teams that I think Texas can say, okay, they'll be in the middle tier as of this moment. And Sarkisian built something great, and they go out there and they beat Louisiana in the home opener. They go on the road at Arkansas. And it was funny because that's a night game. And I'm a conspiracy theorist. And when that game was made and it was a night game, I was like, that's really weird. Like, how does Arkansas get a Saturday night game on ESPN? And then it's like, oh, well, so suddenly, mysteriously, now there's more interest in that game because that'll actually be Texas versus an SEC school. By the way, Texas had some success against SEC programs in bowl games. They did beat Georgia in a game, which, of course, it apparently didn't count because Georgia players didn't want to be there, right? That's how it works.
That's
right?
our
If
excuse
they
every
win,
time.
it counts. They didn't want to be there, so it didn't count. Okay. They did beat Missouri in a bowl game previously as well.
Mhm.
So they've had some success. So I'll be interested. But if they get off to back to what I was saying, so if they get off to a good start, they get off to maybe a 3-0 start. Really get past the first two games, which is Louisiana's at home. That's going to be a tough game. Going on the road against Arkansas, hostile environment. That's a tough game. But if they can have some success and at least get to the Big 12 championship game, then I would say, all right, but potential. But it's not throwing shade or Texas has not won a Big 12 championship since 2009. And they've only been to the Big 12 championship game one time since then, which a couple of years ago with the infamous Sam Mellinger were back.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't sit here and say, oh my gosh, like they're going to hit the ground running. I'm like, I mean, they'll hit the ground and and they'll, and maybe they'll walk and run and stuff like that. But there's still some heavy hitters in there. And I think Oklahoma's better poised, but Texas, we'll see. Let's see what they do this year. And I could probably better answer that question.